Hello everyone, welcome to the Scumdog's Kennel. I'm your host, Chris Williams, and in today's Cryptid Corner mini episode, I have 3 tales involving encounters with, flying humanoid beings, folks. And these dark tales of these flying cryptids, we're going to learn all about them. The first article we'll be reading is Dark Bat-Winged Humanoid, Twice Observed Flying Over Southeast York, Pennsylvania. Let's get into this article now and hear exactly what the witnesses saw. I recently received a telephone call from MH, a resident of Southeast York, Pennsylvania, who wanted to report 2 separate sightings of a possible winged humanoid in the vicinity of I-83 and Mount Ross Avenue. My first incident occurred in June 2024 at around 1 p.m. local time. While MH was at her home, accompanied by a friend, they heard what sounded like a large helicopter above the residence. When they went outside to investigate the sound, they observed a small private plane and a large dark bat-winged creature near the aircraft. Both the plane and the beast were approximately the same size. As they continued to watch the winged creature, they both noticed a small head and legs. It seemed to propel itself alongside the aircraft without the use of its wings. Neither witness observed the winged humanoid flap its wings. Then, recently, in late July 2025, MH was driving south on I-83 near the Mount Ross Avenue intersection near her home at around 2:30 p.m. when she observed the same winged humanoid flying above several buzzards who were circling in the sky. The description was the same as the June 2024 sighting. The general area is well known for strange sightings, even though it is primarily a residential location. I received reports of Bigfoot, cryptid canines, and other various anomalies over the past 20 years or so. I will continue to monitor the area and will post any updates or other incidents lawn. So, very interesting, folks. This area seems to be rife with basically people seeing these cryptids and perhaps other things as well. It could be that this area is some sort of window area and this stuff just naturally seems to happen there, folks. It does seem to make sense to me. But is that really what it is? Maybe what she saw here, MH, was some sort of drone, folks. I'm saying that because, remember, in the first sighting she saw this entity that was basically the same size as this aircraft. I'm thinking that maybe it was some sort of mechanical device and she didn't see what was keeping the device up, but it was being controlled by this, aircraft. Perhaps, though, I'm not quite sure. Either way, that's just the first story, folks. Let's move on to the next story. This next report comes from 2004 from the site of phantomsandmonsters.com and concerns a witness in Bluefield, West Virginia, who had an encounter with just such a monstrosity, another flying cryptid, folks, when he was a child. He describes the area as being mostly quaint, rural farmland, and he says one day he had a very frightening experience when he was playing near a hedge separating his house and the neighbors. He says of what happened. Now, folks, let's read this guy's account, but before we do, this is yet another encounter that this guy had. But this time, this happened, when the witness was a child. But I think he reported this in 2004. But then again, I'm not quite sure, folks. But indeed, if this guy reported it back in 2004 and was an adult by then we have to say that this guy probably saw this either in the early 90s or maybe late 80s. And, that's just one report of basically people seeing these weird winged humanoids. And it's been going on now for decades. So let's continue. And here is the story itself, folks. I was sitting there in broad sunny daylight when all of a sudden I saw rustling in the hedges. I looked over and out popped out what I can only put into words as a gargoyle. It looked at me with solid, pointed black eyes. It had a frog green skin. Its face looked like a frog, except it had teeth and ears. I'll never forget for the rest of my life. Its ears flexed outward like 2 big green gloves on the side of its head, like the king that the gargoyles and statues has. Its body was shaped like a bulldog, and its webbed feet turned inward as it walked. So, that sounds rather interesting, folks, and the fact that its, feet turned inward when it walks, maybe that basically surmises that this creature mostly spends most of its time in the air, and walking on the ground is rather awkward for it, because that does sound like the way I would think that a flying creature sometimes behaves on the ground. Like it can fly in the air, but it's rather awkward when it basically is on its own 2 feet. So that basically tracks with me, folks. But let's read on. Once it saw me, it paused and opened its mouth wide open and hissed. He held it wide open as if to taste the air. I was so scared that I was completely paralyzed. I tried to cry for help, but nothing came out, and as if someone took the pause button off of me, I fled so fast to my home that I don't even remember the race getting there. I was in a panic. I tried to describe it to my mom. She pointed at the animal childcraft books and said, see if you can show Mommy a picture of the animal. The closest animal they could find that looked like what I saw was a koala bear, but I only picked that animal out because it had similar black pointed eyes. My mother laughed and said, son, those animals are only in Australia. What you probably saw was a dog, and with that, it was never spoken of again. Too bad, folks. Now, from, as I said, the description here, it sounds like this creature could possibly be a reptilian to me. Remember, he said it looked like a frog-like creature? Well, that kind of reminds me of basically various descriptions of, well, of reptile and reptilian creatures, and even the wings as well. So maybe that's what he saw. And the fact that it had black eyes is another, well, thing that we've seen before in those kinds of stories. But either way, folks, let's continue. Could this possibly have been just a misidentified dog with a description like that? If not, then what was it? Your guess is as good as anyone's. A similarly disturbing account reported at around the same time comes from a Reddit user who is obviously from Reddit, from a witness who says his own experience happened in California's Central Valley, this time in a rather suburban area surrounded by orchids. He describes how one evening at around 10 p.m. he was riding a skateboard home when he heard what sounded like gusts of wind, even though the night was calm. He says, what happened next? I don't know about you folks, but, well, the guy seems rather calm as he's about to describe his encounter, folks, so maybe this encounter for this young man wasn't as bad as the last witness that we just read through, folks. So let's continue his story. I look up in the direction of the sound, and behind the slope of my neighbor's roof, I see two large wings flap and then begin to fold as if the creature had just landed there. As the wings were folding, I guess they were about 5 feet in length, and I noticed that the house light from behind the creature trickled through the wings. They were opaque and leathery, not feathered like a hawk's. It seemed to have heard me as I was pausing, and it became still. Wings folded and rising over its circular head. It had no ears or horns or anything protruding from its head. It was just round. Okay, unlike the other report, he just didn't have anything growing out of his head. No ears or anything or horns. But like the last report that basically described this creature as having a frog-like face, that sounds rather similar to this encounter that this young man had as well. So, do you think it's possible that these creatures are related, that this was another reptilian encounter too? Or do you suppose that this is some sort of demonic encounter, and maybe all of them, well, are as well? Simply, folks, we just don't know. All we can do is, as I said, theorize and surmise at the actual nature of these creatures. And once again, we'll talk about this subject a little more after we finish off the rest of this article. I couldn't see much more as the light was behind the creature, so it was a black silhouette, but the leather on its wings were brown. I pulled out my phone and tried to use the flashlight setting to get a better view of it as I was passing, but the light didn't reach far enough, and the creature slowly started to descend behind the slope of the roof until I no longer saw it. I ran into my home and just laid in bed thinking about what the hell I had just seen. It was too big to be a bat. I've seen bats around here, and they're all small, and their head is shaped nothing like what I had seen. It couldn't have been a bird either, as I distinctly remember the wings being leathery with no feathers. Okay, first off, folks, what was this creature? It was obviously a flying cryptid, but we don't really know what year this actually took in, do we, folks? Could it have been maybe a drone, perhaps? I have my doubt about that. I mean, all these signs can't be drones, but there's a possibility that some of them are, I will say. But what was this creature? Was it a demon? Was it an alien? Was it perhaps maybe a member of the cryptoterrestrials that we've talked about so many times before, folks? You know, maybe it was a creature that, well, lives on Earth, but is not human and stuff like that. That comes from Earth, but it's not us. Is that what it was? We simply don't know. All I can say, folks, is indeed, I believe these signs do and are real. I think people are seeing something out there. And it's not just these obviously dark flying cryptids, folks. People are seeing, well, not just them. They're seeing aliens. They're seeing cryptids. They're seeing all these things. What is the truth about all of them? Maybe one day we'll know that truth. Either way, we're at the end, so please go subscribe to my YouTube channel. Read comics, they're bad for you. You can use the YouTube link down below in the descriptions or the chat to go subscribe to me. Hit that like button for me. Make sure you're still subscribed. Leave some comments down below. Hit that bell for notifications. Make sure to hit the part of the bell that will give you all future notifications. And please share this video out. I'm Chris Williams from the Scumdogs Kennel. Thank you all for joining me. I'll be back again tomorrow with another great video. So be sure to come back again then. Till next time, folks, I'll see you all again soon.